My name is Victoria Kvarnbrandt and I will be holding my oral presentation today. This week, as you know, we have been reading and working with E.L. Doctorow's novel Ragtime, and I have also read an essay written by Masood Raja, professor at Kent State University in Ohio. The essay is called Doctorow's Ragtime, Inserting Class in a Literary Discussion, and I will go through it, highlighting the main points as well as adding my own comments on it. I have uploaded a written document containing some of the main points as well as some quotes that hopefully can be of use for keeping up with the content of the essay. You can find this under Communication Lit Oral Presentations on Disco. So, this essay presents critique towards the glorification of the neoliberal globalization and the market economy, and how the possibilities of upward mobility are portrayed in literature. Raja wants to raise awareness of how important literary works, such as Ragtime, are read. He calls for a different kind of reading than the conventional, and he uses Ragtime to exemplify his claims. He means that while Ragtime, on the one hand, is a transgressive work that includes different perspectives and points of view, and can be seen as sort of a critical rewriting of history, it is rather simplistic in how it portrays the prospect of creating a better future for yourself or for others. The only way to achieve upward mobility is through succeeding on the marketplace. This leads to Ragtime in practice ending up supporting the sort of individualism and faith in the capitalist system that it in theory would be supposed to be against. Raja focuses on Tate's story and his journey from poor working class to a successful entrepreneur. Tate manages to lift himself and his daughter out of poverty, and he also marries the character Mother and thus becomes part of a family on the higher end of the societal hierarchy. The means through which he manages to do this is by creating his own economical success. When he attempts to make a living out of his art, he succeeds when he finds a shop owner who can mass produce his work. The capitalist system cooperates, it even saves him. It is also this that enables him to form a relationship with Mother. This is compared in the essay to other characters in the book who try to fight the system on a political and collective level instead, such as anarchist and revolutionary Emma Goldman or Coalhouse Walker Jr., and how their attempts fail. This focus on the market capitalism overly emphasizes its regenerative capacity and thus paints an unrealistic picture of American exceptionalism. Raja claims that while Ragtime presents itself as a book that focuses on the peripheral subjects in society and aspires to rewrite history, it falls short, and its attempt to take on an interventionist stance become cosmetic rather than substantial. They work on the surface, but if you look at it closer, as Raja proposes with a sense of class consciousness, the lack of depth is revealed. Instead of criticizing and subverting neoliberal ideals, the book implicitly enforces them. And along with this, as an opposition to this notion of the benevolent marketplace, Ragtime also reproduces the neoliberal idea of the government as the evil force. Raja criticizes this, pointing to how there are few legal forms of governmental discrimination, while a considerate amount of such can be found in the corporate world. He therefore claims this view of the government to be unfair and false. Raja writes that the government, as the text makes clear, is controlled by the J.P. Morgans and Fords of the world. The only possible escape for Tate is, consequently, the marketplace. So, Tate takes his daughter and escapes from New York City. This journey to a more pastoral landscape is interpreted by Raja as imbued with the myth of how immigrants can start over by moving away from the city. He refers to David Noble, who in turn refers to Frederick Jackson Turner, who stated that adult Europeans crossing the Atlantic were given new identities by the sacred national landscape. Even more, though, Raja points to the myth of a promise of delivery through industry. Once again, we reach the end point of Tate's journey, the one thing that saves him, the sacred marketplace. In the essay, Raja compares Tate's story to a couple of other novels that come from a similar realist tradition as Doctorow, but where the characters and storylines differ from that in Ragtime. First, it's the character Hugh Wolfe in Rebecca Harding Davis's novel Life in the Iron Mills. Like Tate, the character of Wolfe is an immigrant and an artist, but in his case, he fails to be saved by the capitalist system. This paints a more realistic picture, according to Raja. The other novel Raja uses in his comparison is Mumbo Jumbo by Ishmael Reed. In this novel, the historical hierarchy of power is turned upside down through the author presenting the cultures of Africa and Caribbean as the mainstream history instead of the white Anglo-Saxon culture. Raja means that this novel, by doing so, manages what Ragtime does not, to actually subvert the notion of dominant history. Raja also refers to Kenneth Saltman and Robin Goodman, two professors who have shed light on just how works that aspire to contest the interests of the global capital actually end up serving them, and how this is rewarded by multinational corporations. I would like to stay on the first part of this notion, that is, how Ragtime does in fact take a critical stance towards the capitalists and the factory owners. Raja brings this up, and he questions the relevance of his own critique of the work on this very basis. His explanation is, though, that the fact that Ragtime aspires to present a radical narrative makes it a very good example, and an important one, to show why a critical reading with a sense of class consciousness is crucial. Because otherwise, approaching the novel uncritically would give the reader the impression that something that is indeed possible, that is, creating your own success with the help of capitalism, is the only way it can be done, and also that it is much easier than it really is. Raja points to the fact that it was worker solidarity and not individualism that historically has done most for the workers in America, and excluding this from the narrative of Ragtime paints an unrealistic picture of how upward mobility can be achieved. Okay, so these are the main points of Masood Raja's essay. He concludes by pointing out that in this current stage of neoliberal globalization, where a lot of powerful forces work to instill the concept of individualism as the way forward, it is crucial to present an alternative view, a view that highlights the importance of class solidarity and collective efforts, since this is the way Raja sees that a better life could be created for as many as possible, instead of the lucky few who manage to succeed individually through the capitalist system. So, I will now turn to the part of my presentation where I discuss the essay and add my own comments. First of all, this definitely strikes me as a political text. The main thesis, as well as most of Raja's claims, rest on the grounds of an ideology found on the left side of the political spectrum that favors collective efforts and governmental interventions over a more right-wing approach that stands for individualism and a belief in the capitalist system. I do think that the author of this essay supports his claim in a believable manner, seeing how he uses historical examples, such as drawing on how collective efforts have been more fruitful to workers than individual success stories. I also appreciate Raja's sense of awareness of how his essay can be received as controversial. He questions his own claims and goes on to explain how he thinks and why a critical reading with a sense of class consciousness is important and relevant. One of his main points is the importance of reassessing truths about how society works and to take a critical look at who these truths come from and how this is connected to serving their own purposes, in this case the neoliberal capital system and the big corporations, and I think that he does this well. He wants to make people think critically instead of simply accepting what they are being fed. If I were to criticize the text, or more specifically the author's way of structuring it, I would have to say that I found it a bit repetitive. Raja returns over and over again to stating that the only manageable way of achieving upward mobility in ragtime is through personal efforts supported by the marketplace and the capitalist system. I suppose that the reason he comes back to this is, of course, that it is a very important aspect of the essay. But when working with his text, I almost felt that he overdid it. Perhaps the same points could have been made even if the essay had been a bit shorter and thus felt more to the point and concise. Considering the content of the essay, though, I found it to be a valuable addition to the novel that highlights relevant flaws found in it. I agree with Raja that raising awareness and encouraging readers to take a critical approach to canonical literature is important. I would also like to connect this essay and the thoughts it presents to my own previous studies. Last term, I took gender studies at Örebro University, and we read about how the theories presented by distinguished sociologists such as Anthony Giddens and Ulrich Beck can be criticized and deemed inaccurate by being looked at from a feminist perspective. The principle of this is similar to the one Raja proposes, as they share the idea of scrutinizing the established ideas and standing up to injustices. Since I was taking gender studies, the focus of our reading material was mainly on feminism, and thus not as explicitly focused on class as Raja's essay, but the overall claims were very similar, seeing as the theories Giddens and Beck present support the view of individualism as prevailing and making structural factors such as gender, class, race that affect people's possibilities to succeed superfluous or irrelevant. Approaching these theories from a critical standpoint reveals flaws and finds evidence to support the feminist idea of structural factors still being very much present. This is the same strategy Raja uses, as well as similar results as the ones he reaches in his essay. And finally, I would like to mention a political piece from a Swedish left-wing newspaper that I came across online the other day. As you all probably know, Republican candidate Donald Trump has been elected president of the United States, and he is seen as a rather unconventional choice. A lot of people are thought to have voted for him out of dissatisfaction with the system and with the other available alternatives. And according to the piece I read, written by Göran Greider, people's trust in the neoliberal market economy is partly to blame for the prosperity of such an unconventional and populist candidate as Donald Trump. Greider claims that Trump's victory can be connected to Trump's own success as a businessman and his advocacy for the individual's responsibility for their prosperity rather than having a focus on collective political action. Since this was a political piece representing the left wing, the author of the article did not believe that Trump's way of leading the country will be successful in helping a majority of those struggling to make a better life. This supports Raja's claims of the problems with putting too much faith in capitalism as a means to achieve equality. I think that making these comparisons, especially the first one since it was conducted by scholars, but also looking at pieces from the media, works to strengthen the credibility of Raja's claims, since it shows that thinking that goes along with his can be found from different parts of society and be supported by different examples. Okay, so that was my presentation. I hope that you have been able to follow, and I look forward to reading your comments in the forum. Thank you for listening.